The marble floors of my childhood home in Beverly Hills echoed with every step as I walked through those grand hallways one last time. My father's voice still rang in my ears. "If you marry that girl, you are no longer our son." 10 years later, as I stood in my own beautiful home, hearing my doorbell ring at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday night, I never could have imagined who would be standing on my doorstep or how the tables would turn so dramatically. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Alexander Sterling, and I grew up in the affluent hills of Beverly Hills, California. My father, Richard Sterling, was a prominent entertainment lawyer who represented A-list celebrities in major studios. My mother, Catherine Sterling, came from old Hollywood money. Her grandfather had been one of the founding partners of a major film studio. Together, they created what outsiders would call the perfect American dream, a sprawling Mediterranean mansion, membership at exclusive country clubs, and connections that could open any door in Hollywood. From childhood, my parents had my entire life mapped out. Private tutors, elite prep schools, summers in the Hamptons with other wealthy families. I was groomed to take over my father's law practice, to marry someone from an appropriate family, and to continue the sterling legacy of wealth and influence. By my senior year at Stanford, I was everything my parents had molded me to be. Summa cum laude, accepted to Harvard Law School, and already being courted by top-tier law firms. My social circle consisted entirely of children from similar backgrounds, future lawyers, doctors, business executives, and entertainment industry heirs. The plan was crystal clear: finish law school, join my father's firm, then marry someone. Like Vanessa Ashworth, whose father owned a chain of luxury hotels, or perhaps Isabella Montgomery, whose family had been in real estate development for 3 generations, but life rarely follows. The script our parents write for us, the summer. Before law school, I decided to volunteer at a community center in East Los Angeles. It wasn't because my family encouraged it, quite the opposite, but because I wanted to do something meaningful before diving into the corporate world. The center, called Nueva Esperanza, served low-income families, offering everything from job training to after-school programs for kids. It was there. On a sweltering Tuesday morning in June, I met Sophia Martinez. Sophia was leading a group of teenagers in a college prep workshop when I first saw her. She was petite, with expressive brown eyes and a passion in her voice that commanded attention. Her clothes were professional, but clearly not expensive, a simple blue dress and practical flats that had seen better days. She was explaining financial aid applications with the kind of enthusiasm most people reserved for lottery tickets. Remember what? She told the students, "College isn't just for rich kids. If you work hard and stay focused, there are programs that will help you get there." I should know I'm living proof. After the session, I approached her. "That was incredible," I said. "How long have you been working here?" She looked up and smiled, not the calculated, networking smile I was used to from my social circle, but something genuine and warm. 3 years now. I started as a volunteer while I was getting my teaching degree, and they offered me a full-time position when I graduated. "Teaching degree from where?" I asked. "Cal State LA," she said proudly. I was the first person in my family to go to college. My parents both work in factories, my dad in automotive assembly, my mom in textiles. They sacrificed everything to give me opportunities they never had. We started talking, and I was amazed by her intelligence and passion. Sophia had grown up in a small apartment with her parents and 3 younger siblings. She'd worked part-time, jobs throughout high school and college, sending money home to help with her siblings' expenses. Her dream was to become a high school counselor, helping kids from backgrounds like hers navigate the path to college. "Most of these kids have never seen anyone like them succeed," she explained during one of our many conversations that summer. "They need to know it's possible. They need someone who understands where they're coming from." The more I got to know Sophia, the more I realized how sheltered and privileged my life had been. She didn't care about designer labels or exclusive clubs. She'd never been to Europe, had never even been on a plane. Her idea of a perfect date was getting tacos from a food truck and walking through Griffith Park, She volunteered at a homeless shelter on weekends and sent part of her modest salary home to help her youngest brother with his college applications. Parents first met Sophia in late July when they made an unannounced visit to the community center. They'd grown suspicious about how I was spending my summer and decided to see for themselves what was keeping me in that neighborhood. Instead of networking at the country club, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees the moment. My mother laid eyes on Sophia. "Alexander, darling," my mother said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Aren't you going to introduce us to your colleague?" I could feel my cheeks burning as I stood up from the table where Sophia and I had been reviewing college applications. "Mom, Dad, this is Sophia Martinez." "Sophia, these are my parents, Richard and Catherine Sterling." "Meet you immediately." Stood and extended her hand to my father. "Mr. Sterling, it's wonderful to meet you. Alexander has told me so much about your work." Her handshake was confident, her eye contact direct, but I could see the slight nervousness in her posture. My father shook her hand briefly, his expression unreadable. My mother simply nodded, her lips pursed in what she probably thought was a polite smile. "And what exactly do you do here, Sophia?" my father asked, his tone the same one he'd use in a deposition. "My college counselor and program coordinator. I help students from low-income families navigate the college application process and develop life skills for success." "How admirable," my mother said, the word dripping with condescension. "And where did you receive your training for this kind of work?" "I have a degree in education from Cal State LA, and I'm working on my master's in counseling psychology through their evening program." My parents exchanged one of their loaded glances, the kind that communicated volumes without saying a word. "Well," my father said finally, "we should let you get back to your important work. Alexander, we'll talk at dinner tonight." The dinner that followed was excruciating. My parents didn't directly criticize Sophia, but their comments were sharp enough to draw blood. "She seems earnest," my mother said, cutting her Dover soul into precise pieces. "Though I do hope you're not getting too attached to your little volunteer friends. You'll be starting at Harvard soon." "What exactly does community counseling pay these days?" my father asked, swirling his wine. "I imagine it's barely enough to support oneself, let alone a family." I defended Sophia as best I could, explaining her goals and her character, but I could see my words weren't landing. To my parents, Sophia wasn't a person with dreams and aspirations. She was a threat to their carefully constructed plans for my future. "Alexander's son," my father said, leaning forward. "I understand the appeal of ... philanthropy, but you have to be realistic about your future. You're going to be a lawyer, not a social worker. You need a wife who understands that world, who can be an asset to your career." "Sophia is incredible," I said firmly. "She's intelligent, compassionate, and she's making a real difference in people's lives." "It's making a difference," my mother repeated with a slight laugh. "Darling, you can make a difference through the proper channels: charity boards, fundraising, galas, political connections. You don't need to marry into it." The rest of the summer passed in a blur of stolen moments with Sophia and increasingly tense conversations with my parents. They'd started arranging more social events, trying to put me in situations where I'd meet appropriate young women. They'd mention, seemingly casually, how well Vanessa Ashworth was doing at her public relations firm, or how Isabella Montgomery had just returned from studying art history in Florence. But the more time I spent with Sophia, the more I realized that everything I'd been taught about what mattered in life was wrong. Sophia didn't have money or connections, but she had something far more valuable: genuine purpose, integrity, and a passion for making the world better. When she looked at me, she didn't see a trust fund or a career opportunity. She saw someone she genuinely cared about. By the end of August, I was in love. Not the strategic, calculated kind of arrangement my parents had always envisioned for me, but something deep and real that made me want to be a better person. Sophia felt the same way, though she was careful not to push too hard, sensing the tension with my family. "I know this is complicated for you," she said one evening, as we watched the sunset from the Hollywood sign overlook. "Your parents want what they think is best for you, and I'm probably not what they had in mind." "They don't know you," I replied, taking her hand. "If they did, they'd understand." Sophia squeezed my fingers gently. Would they, though? Let's be honest about what this is. I'm a girl from East LA whose parents work in factories. You're Alexander Sterling from Beverly Hills. We're from different worlds. So what? I said, turning to face her. Does that mean what we have isn't real? No, she said, her voice soft but firm. It means it's going to be harder than either of us expected. She was right, of course. As my final weeks of summer drew to a close, the pressure from my parents intensified. They'd arranged for me to attend various social events where I'd inevitably be seated next to some eligible young woman who'd been briefed on my family's expectations. But I'd changed. The privileged boy who'd started that summer was gone, replaced by someone who'd tasted authentic love and refused to settle for anything less. I knew that when I left for Harvard, I'd have to make a choice between the life my parents had planned. For me and the life I wanted to build with Sophia, the confrontation was coming, and I wasn't sure any of us were ready for it. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. 3 weeks before I was supposed to leave for Harvard Law School, my parents called me into my father's study for what they called a serious discussion about my future. I found them both waiting for me, my father behind his massive mahogany desk, my mother seated in one of the leather chairs that had probably cost more than Sophia's family made in 6 months. On the desk was a thick manila folder that I would soon learn contained my entire summer investigated in excruciating detail. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Sit down, Alexander, my father said, his voice carrying the authority that had made him one of Hollywood's most feared negotiators. We've been watching you this summer, my mother began, her perfectly manicured fingers clasped tightly in her lap, and we're concerned about the direction your life is taking. My father opened the folder and began reading from what I realized was a private investigator's report. Sofia Elena Martinez, age 23, daughter of Miguel Martinez, assembly line worker at Ford Motor Company, and Carmen Martinez, seamstress at Pacific Textiles. Family income approximately $52,000 annually. Lives in a 2-bedroom apartment in East Los Angeles with her parents and 3 siblings. You had her investigated? I stood up, fury coursing through my veins. How could you do that? We had to. Protect our investment, my mother said coldly. Do you have any idea how much we've spent on your education, your connections, your future? Harvard Law School alone is costing us $60,000 a year. This girl is a distraction, my father continued, ignoring my outrage. A very expensive distraction. You think it's a coincidence that she happened to be working at that community center where you'd meet her? You think she doesn't know exactly who you are and what you're worth? Sophia isn't like that, I protested. But doubt was creeping in despite my best efforts to fight it. My mother's approach suddenly softened. Sweetheart, I know this feels real to you, but you've lived a sheltered life. You don't understand how people from certain backgrounds see relationships as opportunities for advancement. That's not who Sophia is, I said, though my voice sounded less certain than I'd intended. Then bring her to the charity gala this weekend, my father said, calling my bluff. If she's as wonderful as you claim, she should fit right in with our world. I should have recognized it as a trap, but I was young and in love, and I believed that if my parents could just see Sophia in our environment, they'd understand what I saw in her. I called Sophia that night, my hands shaking as I dialed. A charity gala? Sophia asked, when I explained the invitation. Alex, I don't have anything appropriate to wear to something like that, and honestly, I'm not sure I'd fit in. You'll be perfect, I insisted. And don't worry about clothes wheel. Figure something out. Sophia agreed reluctantly, and I spent the next week helping her prepare. I took her shopping at Nordstrom, insisting on buying her a dress that cost more than she made in a month. Tried to coach her on the kinds of conversations she might encounter, the social dynamics of Beverly Hills elite. Just be yourself, I kept telling her, though I was increasingly nervous about what that might mean to my parents. World. The annual Sterling Foundation Gala was held at the Beverly Hills Hotel, in a ballroom that glittered with crystal chandeliers, and was filled with Hollywood's elite. Sophia looked stunning in her navy blue dress, but I could see her discomfort as we walked through the crowd of entertainment executives. politicians, and society figures. My parents introduced her to everyone as Alexander's friend from his volunteer work, a description that immediately marked her as an outsider. The conversations that followed were polite but pointed, filled with subtle questions designed to highlight the differences between Sophia's background and ours. "So you work with disadvantaged youth," said Mrs. Pemberton, the wife of a studio executive. "How noble. Tell me, what does your father do?" "He works on the assembly line at Ford," Sophia replied honestly. "Blue collar," Mrs. Pemberton said, her smile never wavering. "And your mother?" "She's a seamstress." The woman's eyebrows rose slightly. "How quaint. And you went to ... Cal State, was it?" "I'm not familiar with their programs." I watched Sophia's confidence erode with each interaction. These people weren't being overtly rude. They were systematically making her feel unwelcome, highlighting every difference between her background and theirs. She was trying so hard to fit in, to prove herself worthy of their son, but nothing, she said, seemed to satisfy them. The final humiliation came during the silent auction. Sophia was admiring a painting when she quietly asked me what the bidding numbers meant. "Those are the bid amounts," I whispered. "That painting is currently at $15,000. Her face went pale. "15,000? For one painting?" Unfortunately, my mother overheard. "Oh, that's nothing, dear," she said with false sweetness. "Last year, Alexander bid $30,000 on a sculpture. Of course, it's all for charity, so the money goes to a good cause." Sophia looked stricken. I could see her doing the math in her head. $30,000 was more than half her family's annual income, spent casually. "On art." "Excuse me," Sophia said quietly, and disappeared toward the ladies' room. I found her there 10 minutes later, crying quietly as she stared at herself in the mirror. "I don't belong here, Alex," she said when she saw me. "Your mother is right. This is your world, and I'm just ... I'm not part of it." "That's not true," I said desperately. "These people don't matter. What matters is us, does it?" She asked, turning to face me. "Because watching you tonight, seeing you in this environment, this is who you really are. This is the life you're going back to when you go to Harvard, and I'll just be the girl from East LA who was fun for a summer." "Sophia, please, I think." "I should go," she said, gathering her purse. "And I think you should really consider what your parents are saying. Maybe they're right. Maybe we are from different worlds." She left that night, and I didn't hear from her for 3 days. When I finally tracked her down at the community center, she was distant and formal. "I've been thinking about us," she said, not meeting my eyes. "About what kind of future we could really have together." "We can have any future we want," I said desperately. "Can we?" She asked, "Because I've been watching you struggle with this. For weeks you love me, I know that. But you also love your family, your future, the life you've always known. And I can't ask you to give all that up for me. You're not asking me to give anything up. I'm choosing you. Are you?" she challenged me. "Or are you just rebelling against your parents' expectations? Because in 5 years, when the novelty wears off and you're stuck with someone who doesn't understand your world, how are you going to feel then?" Her words hit me like physical blows because part of Mia, part I hated, wondered if she might be right. The gala had shown me just how different our worlds really were, and I couldn't deny that the differences were significant. "I need some time to think," Sophia said finally. "So do you." That night, my parents cornered me again. This time, they didn't hide behind false concern or gentle manipulation. "You saw tonight how she fit in," my mother said bluntly. "Was completely out of her element. Imagine bringing her to business dinners, political fundraisers, social events that are crucial to your career." She was nervous. I protested weakly. "She was inappropriate," my father corrected. "Alexander, I'm going to be direct with you. You have a choice to make. You can continue this relationship and destroy your future because, make no mistake, marrying someone like Sophia Martinez will close doors that can never be reopened. You can end it now and get on with your real life." "And if I choose Sophia?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. My mother's mask finally slipped, revealing the steel underneath. "Then you choose her over us, over your family, your inheritance, your future. You'll be on your own financially, no law school. No trust fund, no family connections. He'll be just another struggling young man trying to make it on his own. You're cutting me off? I asked, stunned despite myself. We're protecting our investment, my father said coldly. We've spent 25 years and millions of dollars creating opportunities for you. We're not going to watch you throw that away for some girl you've known for 3 months. What if I truly love her? I asked quietly. Love. My mother laughed bitterly. Alexander, love is a luxury you can afford after you've built a secure foundation. Marriage is a partnership, a merger of compatible lives and goals. What you're feeling is infatuation, and it will pass. They gave me a week to decide. 1 week to choose between the woman I loved and everything I'd ever known, everyone I'd ever been. It was the longest week of my life, and by the end of it I knew exactly what I had to do. The silence after I closed the door felt heavier than anything I'd ever experienced. Sophia found me in our kitchen, staring out the window at the spot where my parents' Mercedes had been parked just moments before. Any regrets? She asked gently, wrapping her arms around me from behind. None, I said, and was surprised to realize I meant it completely. For the first time in 10 years, I feel like that chapter is finally closed. But my parents weren't finished with us yet. 3 days later, Sophia came home from work with a troubled expression. You need to see this, she said, handing me a letter that had been delivered to her school. It was from my father's law firm, not from him personally, but from one of his associates. The letter threatened to expose what they called my financial irregularities unless I reconsidered their reasonable request for family assistance. They were implying that my nonprofit's funding sources were questionable, suggesting they'd launch an investigation that could damage both my career and Sophia's position as principal. They're trying to blackmail us, Sophia said, anger flashing in her eyes. They think they can intimidate us into giving them money. I read the letter again, feeling my jaw clench with every word. They're more desperate than I thought. It's more ruthless? What do we do? Sophia asked. I smiled grimly. We do what I should have done years ago. We fight back. The next morning, I called a friend of mine from law school who now worked for the State Bar Association. Within hours, I'd filed a formal complaint against my father's firm for attempted extortion. I also reached out to several journalist contacts who specialized in legal ethics stories. But the real turning point came when Isabella, our 7-year-old daughter, overheard Sophia and me discussing the situation. Daddy, she said, looking up from her homework with those intelligent brown eyes that reminded me so much of her mother, why are those people trying to be mean to you? I knelt down to her level. Sometimes, sweetheart, when people make bad choices and don't want to admit they were wrong, they try to blame other people instead. But that's not fair, Isabella said, with the moral clarity that only children possess. No, it's not fair, I agreed. But we're going to make sure they can't hurt anyone else the way they tried to hurt us. That conversation with my daughter crystallized something for me. This wasn't just about my parents anymore. It was about the pattern of behavior they represented. How many other families had they looked down on? How many other young people had they dismissed because of their backgrounds? I decided to go public with our story. The article appeared in the Los Angeles Times 3 weeks later, titled Love versus Legacy, a Beverly Hills son's choice. It told our entire story, the disownment, the struggle, our success, and their recent attempt at extortion. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of people reached out to share similar stories of family rejection, class prejudice, and the courage to choose love over money. Sophia and I were invited to speak at conferences about following your values despite family pressure. Our nonprofit received a flood of donations and volunteer applications, but the most meaningful response came from an unexpected source. 2 months after the article was published, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. But the voice was familiar, my Aunt Patricia, my father's sister, who I hadn't spoken to since the wedding. Alexander, she said, I've been trying to reach you for weeks. I read the article, and I had to call. Aunt Patricia, I said, genuinely surprised. How are you? Ashamed, she said bluntly. Ashamed of how your parents treated you. Ashamed. that I didn't speak up sooner, and ashamed that it took a newspaper article for me to find the courage to reach out. She explained that most of our extended family had been quietly horrified by my parents' behavior for years. Your grandfather would have been disgusted, she told me. He built this family's wealth, yes, but he never forgot his values. He married your grandmother when she was a secretary at his accounting firm, and her family thought he wasn't good enough because he came from immigrants. The conversation lasted 2 hours. Patricia told me that she'd been following our careers from afar, that she was proud of what we'd built, and that she'd love to meet Sophia and Isabella. You have a whole family out here who's been waiting to welcome you back, she said. But the most significant development came a week later. Sophia was putting Isabella to bed when the doorbell rang again. This time, I approached the door with caution, unsure what to expect. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing on our doorstep once more, but they looked different. Smaller, somehow defeated. I opened the door, but didn't invite them in. We read the article, my father said without preamble. His voice was quiet, stripped of the authority I remembered, and I asked. We realized something, my mother said, her eyes red from crying. We lost our son 10 years ago, but we lost ourselves somewhere along the way too. My father pulled out a folded piece of paper. This is a formal apology, he said. It's not just to you, but to Sophia, to Isabella, to everyone. We've hurt with our prejudice and pride. I took the letter but didn't read it. What do you want from me? I asked. Nothing, my mother said, and for the first time in my memory, she sounded completely sincere. We're not here to ask for money or forgiveness or another chance. We're here because we need you to know that we understand now. What we did was wrong. Who we were was wrong. The article opened our eyes, my father added. Reading about our behavior from an outside perspective, seeing how cruel and shallow we'd become. We've spent the last month in therapy, trying to understand how we became people we don't even recognize. Sophia appeared behind me, having heard the conversation. She studied my parents with the same careful attention she gave to struggling students. What's changed? She asked directly. Because 10 years ago, you made it clear that love wasn't enough. Success wasn't enough until it met your standards. So what's different now? My mother looked directly at Sophia for what might have been the first time ever. What's different is that we've lost everything that mattered to us, our son, our granddaughter, our self-respect, and we finally understand that all the things we thought were important were just ... things. We're not asking for anything, my father repeated. We just needed you to know that you were right. About love, about values, about what makes a life worth living. You tried to teach us that 10 years ago, and we were too proud and too foolish to listen. I felt Sophia's hand slip into mine, her silent support giving me strength. I appreciate the apology, I said finally. But words don't undo 10 years of hurt. You don't give back the graduation you missed, the wedding you didn't attend, the granddaughter you've never known. You know, my mother whispered, we know we can't undo any of it. But maybe we can make sure we don't hurt anyone else the way we hurt you. My father nodded. We've donated what's left of our money to your nonprofit. It's not much after the legal bills and downsizing, but it's everything we have. And we volunteered to speak at conferences about the damage that class prejudice can do to families. I stared at them, trying to process this complete reversal of everything they'd once stood for. Your mother has been volunteering at a literacy program for immigrant families, my father continued. And I've been doing pro bono work for families facing housing discrimination. We're trying to understand the world you and Sophia work in, the people you've dedicated your lives to helping. Sophia stepped forward slightly. Why should we believe this isn't just another manipulation? Because we're not asking for anything. In return, my mother said, we're not asking you to forgive us, or take us back, or let us meet Isabella. We're just trying to become people worthy of the son we raised, even if we'll never have the chance to be part of his life again. The conversation continued for another hour. My parents talked about their therapy, their volunteer work, their growing understanding of the privilege they'd taken for granted. They asked thoughtful questions about our work, about the challenges facing the communities we served. When they finally prepared to leave, my mother turned back one last time. Alexander, I know we have no right to ask this, but would you consider letting us send birthday cards to Isabella? not to start a relationship or push our way back into your lives, but just so she knows that her grandparents think about her and wish her well. I looked at Sophia, who gave me a slight nod. 1 card a year, I said finally, on her birthday. No gifts, no requests to visit. Just a card letting her know you're thinking of her. Thank you, my mother whispered, tears streaming down her face. After they left, Sophia and I sat together in our living room, trying to process what had just happened. Do you think they've really changed? She asked. I think they finally learned what we knew all along, I said. That love and character matter. More than money and status. Whether that change is permanent, time will tell. And if it is? Sophia asked. If they really have changed, what then? I thought about Isabella upstairs, about the family we'd built, about the values we'd fought so hard to protect. Then maybe eventually we can find a way to forgive them, I said. Not for their sake, but for ours. Because holding on to anger doesn't serve anyone. 6 months later, Isabella received her first birthday card from her grandparents. It was simple, handmade, with a picture of a butterfly emerging from a cocoon. Inside, they'd written, "Happy 8th birthday, Isabella. We hope you're growing up knowing how loved and special you are. Love, Grandma Catherine and Grandpa Richard." Isabella studied the card carefully. Who are they? She asked. They're people who made some big mistakes, I told her. They're learning to be better. Can people really change? She asked with the serious thoughtfulness that constantly amazed me. The best people can, Sophia said, kissing the top of Isabella's head. When they love someone enough to try. As I watched my daughter carefully place the card on her bookshelf next to pictures of her other grandparents, Sophia's parents, who had loved her unconditionally from the moment she was born, I realized that this was what victory really looked like. Not revenge or vindication, but the knowledge that we'd stayed true to our values, even when it cost us everything. We'd built a life based on love, character, and service to others. And in the end, that life had been strong enough to withstand every test, even my parents' attempts to destroy it. 10 years ago, it forced me to choose between their approval and my happiness. Today, looking at the family Sophia and I had created, at the work we were doing, at the love that filled our home, I knew I'd made the right choice. And for the first time since that awful night when they'd given me their ultimatum, I felt something I'd never expected to feel again. Hope that someday, when enough time had passed and enough healing had happened, we might actually be able to be a family again. But this time, it would be on our terms, built on our values, and it would never, ever be more important than the life Sophia and I had created together. The doorbell would ring again someday, but next time, we'd be ready for whatever or whoever was waiting. On the other side, up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.